Hi, everybody. Welcome to OKEveryday, a podcast about transactional analysis, or TA, and its application. The core belief and basic philosophical position of TA is that I'm okay and you're okay. But we've all experienced times when we felt not okay, when we questioned ourselves, we questioned others in a negative and self-critical kind of way. That limits us from experiencing life to the fullest. That's why myself, Alexi, and Jason, a pro in transactional analysis, will dive into how to make us closer to being and feeling okay every day. Interested? Come join us. Hey everybody, welcome to OKEveryday, a podcast about transactional analysis where we dive into how to make our lives okay every day. Hey Jason.
Hey, Ollie. Great to be back.
Oh, yes, it is. Today we're talking about, drumroll,
Discounting.
discounting. Actually, a fun fact is that we plan to talk about a different topic today, but given our last episode, which we talked about congruency, we decided to dive into discounting. Now, Jason, what was the reason for that?
Yeah, it seemed like a natural flow when after what we talked about last time around congruency and what we talked about in terms of incongruency. And
Mm,
really, incongruency, as we said last time, is when things don't line up. We're not really being kind of true to ourselves. And when we're kind of seeing other people in an incongruent way, we're not being true to them either. So what's
mm,
happening there is on some level, we're discounting. So we're kind of taking away something. So
mhm.
for example, whenever I talk about discounting in workshops, I often say to people, what do you think when you hear the word discounting? What does that, because as we know, Ollie, TA uses words in a very particular way,
That's true.
and usually their first go-to is sales. Actually, when there's a discount on something in the shops, right? so they think about it from that way. And now when there's a discount in the shops, you're taking away something. So it's reduced from the
Mm.
full price, for example. Eh, That's a bargain, right? So that's a good thing, right? But when we use the word in transaction analysis, it's not a good thing. But we
No, it's
are
not.
still taking away. Yeah. So we're psychologically taking away something, but in a negative way, not a positive way. So when we're being incongruent, we're taking something away on some level. And we'll get into the different ways of discounting and the different levels as we track on.
Wow. And you kind of touched upon what is discounting, right? So it's taking away, it's psychologically taking away something from others or from yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's three different ways we discount.
Okay.
So we can discount ourselves. So we're taking something away from ourselves. So what that means is we're not fully accounting for ourselves because that's the opposite, right? So when we're discounting, we're not fully accounting for our abilities, our our self, and all of ourselves, our full self is when we're fully accounting, right? Then we can also discount others, right? So that's when we're treating others in a way that we're not fully accounting for them as a person,
Hmm.
right? And then finally, actually, we can discount the situation, which is discounting aspects of reality. Yeah, so it's like either pretending something's not happening or ignoring it, or sometimes just blanking it out, just not kind of really seeing that it's what's playing out in front of you in reality.
Can I reflect what that reminds me of?
Yes, please.
So it's basically it's around accountability of something, right? Of self, of others, of situation. And it sounds like of myself, that would be I'm not okay. Of others, you're not okay. And situation is nothing's okay. Like everything is bad.
Yeah, brilliant that you've brought it back to one of the very, very core philosophies of transaction analysis, which of course we love, which is when we are treating ourselves or somebody else is not okay, we are discounting,
Right.
right? We're seeing them in a particular way, and judging them based on that, which
Mhm.
means we're not fully accounting for them as a person because there's a whole lot to them as a person, their experience, their education, their personability, all this kind of stuff.
Wow. No,
Oh,
it's beautiful that it comes back to the core concepts usually because that's the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about accounting for self and others, and especially for the situation. But for the situation, feels like just generally nothing's ever going to be okay. if you're discounting the situation, it's just nope, nope, nope,
That's
nobody,
kind of,
nothing for
yeah, the futile position. Like
oh the
there's
futile.
nothing I can do, there's nothing you can do. We're screwed, right?
So
So,
it's the I'm not okay, you're not okay. Basically, that's the one, right?
well, it's any time you're treating yourself or somebody else is not okay,
Mm,
or the
hmm.
situation, by the way, is not okay. Yeah. So again, you're often. I would argue that every time you're discounting, there's a negative spin on it. You're thinking
Mm,
negatively in some way about yourself, the situation, or another person. Right. So that's one of the
right,
clues that we'll talk about is if to recognize if you're discounting, chances are there's kind of a negative story going on in your head
right.
about the situation yourself or somebody else.
Cool. That's very interesting because when we were preparing for this episode, one thing that came to memory was me performing at a concert when I was back in Ukraine, and I was the lead singer and the guitarist for the band, and me and the drummer were usually kind of talking with the audience all the time. And I remember the feeling of when I was speaking to the audience, like there were a few phrases that were basically self-deprecating humor, which was kind of, oh, well, that finally worked. That was one of the phrases I think that I put out after we finished the song. Oh, finally that worked, when kind of implying that it never did. And then before a song was, we have no idea what the song is about, kind of discounting the whole process that we put into the song. And I remember my drummer at the time coming up to me and saying, and we had no idea of transactional analysis, but he came from an okay position saying, dude, don't do that. You're we've put in a ton of work into this, and let everyone know that rather than you just discounting what we've all done here. And that was a beautiful example that I remember when we were preparing to this episode. What do you think of that?
Spot on, Ali. I remember when you shared it at the time. I thought, wow, that is a beautiful example because that is it live. Literally live. You're doing it on stage in front of a group, so you're you were discounting actually your success. If you think about the first one,
True.
that worked. I can't believe that worked. I think when it worked, great. Celebrate it, but through the humor, and often discounting can come through humor, right? And
Mm,
it's not always bad. Do you know what I mean? It's not, there's a place for humor, discounting humor. If you go to see most comedians, prepare yourself. They will do some discounting humor, even to you in the audience, right? But you kind of agree. There's a kind of an agreement. I'm here for that.
right.
But in that particular case, your drummer was spot on. He really called it out because he could hear it in your language
Mm,
that you were inadvertently, and I would argue unconsciously, putting yourself down or putting the song down or putting the work that was put into the song down.
right.
And he didn't like it. And he
No.
made he made you aware of it. And well, chances are, Ali, you probably stopped doing it, did you?
Well, that started a process of me being conscious of it. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's not as easy to stop as it sounds like. Okay, now I know that I'm self-deprecating or discounting, and now I've stopped. No, but kind of it made me realize that I'm actually doing this, and not only in a live performance, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it also just happens in life. And chances are, if people are listening to this, we're recording at noon on a Sunday, chances are that some of you have already discounted yourself or others by noon of today. Because that's just something, I think it's an unconscious thing that we do sometimes as part of humor, and sometimes as something subconscious that just happens, and we don't really don't really account for it, as you
Yeah.
said as at the
And you're
beginning.
quite right because we're not hearing ourselves,
Hmm.
right? So in that case, your drummer heard it and fed it back to you so you could hear it, and then you
True.
became more aware. Because when we are discounting, often it is unconscious, but it will come out in
Hmm.
our language. To an Irish degree, either what we're saying or
Hmm.
the words we're using when we're thinking, and we can do a fair bit of discounting when we're nervous. If you imagine, being nervous about doing an interview or doing a presentation, all of a sudden we can become very, very self-critical and kind of start to discount what's got us to there.
Hmm.
We might forget about a whole lot of our experience and our abilities, and we're there for a reason. So we might actually go in and undersell ourselves because we're coming from a discounting position. When actually, when what we mean by that is we're not fully accounting for all of our experience to date that we're bringing to that interview or bringing to that presentation. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, it does make sense. And you touched upon one very interesting topic for me because I feel like humor is a very big part of our lives. It helps us. But you also said that sometimes humor can be uh, kind of as an act of discounting. So how would you know when you're being funny or you're discounting? It's easy with comedians because you pay for
Right.
them you're in an agreement that they're going to be joking about anything or a specific topic. But how do you know in everyday life that okay, I'm discounting rather than just being funny?
It's a it's kind of a philosophical question to a certain
Ooh,
degree, uh, because there's no right or wrong. The it's not as simple as that. It's more like what's the outcome, right? So
okay.
if I love humor and I use humor a lot in every area that I work, but I have to be conscious of who I'm with when I'm using a particular type of humor. Because what I might find as funny, somebody else may not find as funny. They might find offensive even, or it might discount their culture, might discount a whole lot of stuff, right? So there's always a balance in when we're using humor. We've talked about it before. I love dad jokes. And there's a certain level of discounting in dad jokes, and my kids are forever on my back about it, and they're discounting me. But what makes me roar a laugh, when they squirm over a terrible joke, and there's no real harm being done there, right? So it's
Mm,
it's like the outcome is very important um, when we are using humor in a particular way. Because if we are discounting uh, through humor, it
hmm.
can it can be it can be offensive or can upset some people or just make some people feel bad or uncomfortable. Now, the other side, by the way, is there's a thing called gallows humor, which is when we laugh at things that are kind of dark, and to a lot of degrees, we were just talking about it before actually we came on because Halloween's just gone. A lot of horror movies, are laughable. Do you know what I mean? Even though the subject material, isn't if you really believed what's going on the screen, but we kind of do need to be able to connect with kind of the darker side, and gallows humor can do that too, and it's used a lot in the emergency service. It's called black humor because they have to lighten up some of what they're working with. You might also find it in a very pressurized situation. Very pressurized meeting. It's very, very intense. uh, if somebody can kind of lighten the situation a little bit without too much discounting, then it feels a bit more relaxed. Um, so again, it's an important aspect of us as humans being able to use humor. Um, but if we have kind of said something that in a discounting way, and somebody says, "Well, actually, I didn't like that," then we need to be conscious of that. So
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is first of all, there's a thin line between humor and discounting per se, which is okay, but the thing that kind of makes the line visible would be the outcomes and the context, because you would need to know who you're talking with and how the person reacts if they react poorly or on the other hand, they do like it. They
mm,
do like this conversation. They do like the dark humor, the gallows humor kind of type. At the same time, it's the outcomes of what you're actually achieving this. If it doesn't do any harm, then maybe it's not discounting, it's just humor. At the
that's
same
right.
time, if it harms someone, if someone feels something bad about that particular joke, and there's no prior agreement that this joke would have been had in case of, for example, comedians, because even in comedians, we see people walk out
Oh yeah,
the
comedians get themselves in trouble all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Um, but I think in a way we need to internally check who's the audience. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm,
there's certain humor that I might use in particular relationships that I wouldn't use in a professional setting. And I think that's
okay.
probably across the board. I think lots of people would do that,
Mm,
because the relationships and the situation
sure.
is important when it comes to really any type of discounting language. We're just talking about humor at the moment, but there's lots of other discounting language that can go on, that can play out in the workplace, that can
Mm,
play out certainly at home, and of course internally with our own thoughts. You know,
right.
so it's just with discounting, it's about becoming just a little bit more aware in the moment of
Mm,
what am I thinking? Is there some discounting going on? Before I
mhm,
say something, is there a risk here of there being a discount in some way? And and
right.
and then maybe pulling it back or even catching. because we can also catch ourselves when we've said it. So we might say
Mm.
something that's got a discount to it, and then say, actually, that doesn't that sounds like a discount. So I'm gonna change what I said there because I didn't mean it to come out like that. You know?
Mm. Wow. Wow. And whenever you say about discounting at the workspace, one of the things because that's a huge topic, to be honest with you, about discounting at the workspace. Where would we start to talk about discounting at workspace?
But the great part about discounting is that there's so much to it that's useful, right? So
Mm.
what we're talking about there is about becoming self-aware about our language and our thoughts. So if it's negative or it's risky, you know, check yourself. But then in the workplace, because stuff's happening so fast often, and there's lots of things going on, lots of meetings, lots of projects, lots of kind of uh, you would say a certain type of stress that's going
Right.
on. Um, we can frame up discounting in different ways that can help in that particular situation. So the kind of three areas that we can focus on when it comes to discounting is the stimulus, what's actually going on,
Hmm.
in the workplace, right? So am I conscious of some of the stuff that's going on, or am I ignoring some of the stuff, right? There's always challenges, right?
Right.
That's part of working, and part of working is problem solving. But I can discount that there's a problem at all. So if the team raises something and or somebody brings it to my table and I kind of ignore, don't worry about that, it'll go away type thing. Well, I'm ignoring the problem, right? And then finally, if I'm kind of uh, if I feel it's like too big a problem, then I might be discounting the options, actually the solvability, and I might be just
Mm.
keep on doing the same thing over and over again, which isn't really working.
Hmm.
Like because particularly as say a manager or leader, like if I'm not being flexible enough or listening to what the team is saying or seeking, because that's the other thing. Like some people may discount going to somebody else to get some advice or
Mm.
to take on what's working over there, in a different
Mm.
team. So they might actually kind of limit themselves by not looking at all the options available to them.
Wow. Yeah, and it's kind of the theme of awareness comes up a lot with discounting, correct? And when I was thinking about a few examples in at work where something might happen, where discounting might happen, and how what kind of phrases to look out for, because you shared an amazing article for us to prepare. It's 57 discounts. It's basically phrases which if you hear them, something's going on. Be aware of those. And and it's like one of the phrases there is God did it. That's none of us did it. God did it, But
Oh well, no. If we pull that one back, because that might be a discount using the word God, right? That
true,
might
true,
actually upset some people, but it's more like, oh, it's out of my hands. That's just what happened,
true.
right? Is the kind of other way of looking at that. It
Mm.
was inevitable that was going to happen. I could have told you, right? So we do it, and in the article there's other ones. It was easy; anybody could have done it.
Yeah.
Did you read down? Did you pick up more, Ollie?
Well, it was because I kind of tried to frame them as what they stand for. So yes,
Right.
well, anyone could have done that. It's basically minimizing a contribution of somebody who's done a job. It doesn't mean that they have to have done an excellent job, but it's minimizing contribution, saying, well, anyone could have
Absolutely.
done that. I think and some of the phrases that I've heard over the years, as well as we're working through various companies, was, "Are you sure you're qualified to do this?" I was like, "Why wouldn't I be? Why not? Even if I'm not, then I'll learn. That's the whole shebang, is it not?" Right. So kind of questioning competences, or for example, focusing on mistakes, as in
Yeah.
phrases, you always make that mistake, or you always make mistakes generally.
Mm.
Um,
The always there is very much a discount. Always and never are two very discounting words, you know?
um, or for example, I remember I was being, I don't want to say emotional, but I was triggered by something, and someone said, "Oh, you're being too sensitive." It's like, Well, yeah, well, I am, but that's the reason because something was said and I didn't really like it.
Yeah, well, you weren't. You were feeling is what you were doing
Exactly.
in the moment.
Yeah.
So again, the discount there is too sensitive,
Mm,
right? So you can hear it. It's very much often in the tone, but certainly the words that are used. And that's very much like in that moment, Ollie, your feelings were being discounted. Your
true.
genuine reaction, which means they were treating you on a certain level as not okay. It's not okay if
Hmm.
you have those feelings, right?
Mm,
It's just, and this used to go on for years in the workplace. It's not okay to talk about feelings in the workplace. No, no, no.
mm.
You feelings are for home. Keep your personal stuff at home. It's like no, that's not how humans work. So I mean, thankfully we've evolved a lot better practices in the
True.
workplace around empathy, listening, understanding. Coaching itself is a very good modality to help avoid discounting, right? Because
Mm.
again, a lot of this is unconscious. We're not fully aware. So we can have phrases like "Oh, I expected as much." That's a horrible one. So often we might tell ourselves, "I just can't do it. I just can't." Right? So that's a real kind of heavy duty discount. Or the opposite side, "I have to. I must." Would be a
Mm.
discount because we're creating more pressure. Or it's not ideal. It's not perfect. It's like, oh, stop. Because all of these are kind of setups. And of course, one I've heard many times, which is a very much not okay thought, is, well, he's the problem.
Ooh,
Yeah,
ouch.
I've heard that. I mean, what do you do with that? Because it's like it's a full on not okay discount of that person's abilities, experiences. He's not fully being accounted for as a person. You know.
Mm. You know what? I think a few phrases that kind of that stuck out for me from the article. And by the way, anyone listening to this, it's by Ellen Bader and Jeffrey Dyke. So please do have a read about all these 57 discounts. But it kind of goes back to the example that I gave from the very beginning, as in the self-deprecating humor.
Mm,
It's the one phrase was, "It's the least I could do," or "It was nothing." So
yeah,
it's nothing like, oh no, well, it's not that big of a value. And the second one, the next one that kind of popped to my attention was, oh yeah, most people are better than this than me. It's kind
I
of
know. It's
the imposter syndrome, and even when you read them out or you hear them, they feel kind of,
I know
oh,
they're stingy, right?
yes.
We don't like the feeling, but it happens. It plays out. Now, a lot of the work that I do actually is helping people accept positives.
Mm,
They can often discount positives, so compliments, being told they're doing a good job,
mm,
being recognized, and unconsciously to have this kind of a defense against it or a filter. Somebody might say, "Oh, you look really good in that dress." But what, this old thing? It's like, what happened there? So the person wasn't able to fully accept the compliment.
mm,
Thank you. Yeah, I think I do look good. And that be okay. So a lot of discounting can happen where we bat away the nice things, about
true.
ourselves, about how successful we are in various roles and what
Wow.
we enjoy about them, what we love about them, and the feedback we get. I mean, Ollie, being a manager yourself, I'm sure you've had experience of, performance appraisal where people just go directly to the negative comments. They don't even,
Straight. Don't even care about everything positive that was said the 5 minutes before that, but that one phrase that said,
that's
"Oh, this is what I did wrong."
yeah. They go straight to it and they totally ignore this page of other nice things that are real, by the way, because that's again some of the different kind of levels. I hope we might have a little bit of time here because, as you said, it could go on for ages. But the different levels of discounting, we can discount the existence of something, right? Again, so this
Ooh.
comes back to reality that something, we're just ignoring it. It might
Mm.
be very simple. Somebody's arriving late constantly, and they're being led away with it. You know what I mean? And it's just being ignored. Whereas the rest of the team are going, "Hey, hang on a second. How come how come this guy's got flexi time and we don't?" Right? And then there's existence is probably the main first level one, but then the significance of something. So we can discount that something is significant by
Mm.
ignoring it as well. That it's actually causing a problem. that a problem exists and it's actually causing a problem, right? And of course, as a manager, leader, or personal life as well, if we keep on ignoring something that's been brought to our attention, that's risky. It's only just going to escalate and get worse, right? So sometimes it's important to have conversations, talk about it, kind of in an okay way. Another level, so the kind of the third level is the change possibilities. They could say, yes, it's a problem. Yes, it's very significant, but there's nothing we can do about it.
It's always been this way.
It's always been this way. Well, and I've heard this. This is the way we do it around here. Yeah, but it's dysfunctional. Yeah, but this is the way we do it. It's like don't change the culture. Yeah, it's like wow, okay.
It sounds like James Bond. This is the way we do it.
Yeah, it's always been that way. That doesn't sound like James Bond at all.
No, it doesn't.
But maybe slightly Sean Connery. I'm not too sure. So finally, the kind of fourth level really is if we say, yeah, there is a problem, yeah, it's significant, yeah, there are possibilities to change it. We can then move into a very much an I'm okay position, which is personal abilities, right? What can I do about it? Now, if I discount that, then I'm saying, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Yes, there's a problem. Yes, it's significant. Yes, there's ways to change it, but it's too difficult for me, right? Yeah, as opposed to saying, well, actually, yeah, I think there's some things that I could do here that will benefit or will change the situation. And if I come from a congruent and I'm okay, you're okay position, chances are that will pay off, at least for me, because I've done what I can to influence the situation.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, Jason. Well, as we said even before preparing, we can go and we'd need an hour for this. Maybe we'd need another episode to kind of go in deeper into this because the topic is really deep. And I think building on top of congruency that we talked about last episode, this balances out the other way. So it's a balance between congruency and discounting. And what you just said, there are levels of discounting, right? So there's the change possibility, so the possibility to change something, the significance of a problem, the existence of a problem, and then there's this personal ability to change something. And the levels of discounting basically saying that you're not able, or there's nothing there, or you're not able to do something, or change is impossible, or it's not that important, so we shouldn't change it at all. How do you think we've progressed with today's topic?
Again, I think we covered a lot in a short time, and we might do another episode later on down the line, especially if the listeners or viewers are interested. Just give us a note, and we might do a little bit more down the line because each area we can drill down into. The reality is we all do it. Right?
Yeah,
so it's not about trying to, avoid doing it. It will happen. It's about working with it when it happens, right? Giving ourselves ways out. And I think that's probably enough for people to take away for today.
Yeah. Well, dear viewers and listeners, thank you for being with us on this episode of OK Everyday, where Jason and I talked about discounting. Did you like this video? If you did, press the like button or share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're interested in TA content, amazing. Click the subscribe button and that will keep you informed of every OK Everyday episodes coming out. In any case, we really hope that you stay okay
every day.
Thank you for being with us.